Beyond the Grave says, Battlefield Hardline seems pretty tone-deaf and gross in some pretty obvious ways, but how much do you think that will affect the game's sales or people's opinion of the game? It seems like there are quite a few problems with the game aside from its tone. Do you think EA will hold the game until the political climate changes a bit? Because they seem to be either disinterested in changing the tone of the game or unable to. I haven't really seen enough of the single player to know what the true tone of the full game is. I think the multiplayer is what it is, and it's got a certain attitude to it with the way they put music into it, and the language the teams use while they're being teams. But it just looks like a Battlefield game. There's nothing really too outstanding about any of that stuff. How much will it affect the sales or people's opinion of the game? I don't think it will that much. Like that's maybe sad in a way that more people aren't like worried about that sort of thing. But I don't know. I think there are plenty of people that are not necessarily thinking about the real world ramifications of like our relationship with police. Society's relationship with police and all that sort of stuff, and how that's gone so awry in so many different situations, for really a long time. I mean, it's easy. There's been a recent spotlight put on that stuff in a very major way. With Ferguson happening last year, and just the other things kind of around that have happened like relatively recently, but. We're talking about decades and decades of stuff, and that's all that stuff has been happening for so long. Why would people get offended now? Is it because it's being presented at them, like served up on a platter? Like, here's actual video of this happening. This is inside the United States, by the way, where you thought these sorts of things wouldn't happen. You look at it and you're like, this looks like Beirut. Like, no, it's Missouri. Like, fuck, what the fuck is going on out there? But our relationship with police and police in the media, like movies and TV and all that sort of stuff, think about it. Like decades and decades and decades of the police presented as like the badass cop that works outside the lines to get the job done. He's hard on the criminals because the courts aren't. Like the Cobras of the world, Dirty Harry. This is something that is ingrained into our culture, and it's bigger than Battlefield Hardline. Like presenting the police that way, and you can agree or disagree if you think that's a problem or not. It's hard to say because it's one of those things where you're like, well, does the media that we consume make an impact back into the real world, or are we really able to look at it and go like, well, that's a fantasy. It's a good thing there are real laws to keep the criminals off the streets and keep the criminals safe from the police. Because otherwise, Marion Cobretti would be around blasting people all day long for parking wrong. It's a very complicated problem that goes back to, like I said, decades and decades of movies and television. Our nation's relationship with guns, and racial relations in America too. It touches so many different things in so many different ways that you can't really pin all of that on Battlefield Hardline. If anything, Battlefield Hardline is just a symptom of our collective fascination with badass cops. That's I say our, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who are very much not fascinated by that sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't think it'll make a huge impact on Battlefield Hardline. I think there'll be some people that will be very outraged by certain sequences in the game. I say that as someone who hasn't seen any part of the single player campaign. I'm just kind of guessing that there will be some things in there that people go like, that's fucked up. And I'm like, well, yeah. I know that there are people at EA that are very worried or concerned about how this thing will come out, and definitely people that have been like, I don't know about this one, but they're obviously going to go ahead with the release at this point and put it out, I guess, in March. And I bet that they've already probably been over it with a fine tooth comb, going like, all right, look, we need to, there's going to be some stuff in here, like, okay, change the race of this person, do this, do that. That was my solution. I was on the phone with someone at EA, and I said, well, you want to solve your problem, um, just turn everyone green, and then for when the campaign starts, just say Mars present day, and present it as some disgusting sci-fi fantasy. Problem solved. Because who cares what the space police do, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation because it touches so many different things, and I go back and forth on the different aspects of it because it's like I've enjoyed plenty of things that are badass cops fucking cleaning up the streets, doing all kinds of fucked up shit that are not reading the Miranda rights. So yeah, it's weird. Uh, because it's a very ingrained archetype, kind of the cop that is almost a criminal because you have to be a criminal to catch a criminal, like all that sort of stuff is like a very resonant, like it's a very popular trope. So it's hard to pin all that on Battlefield Hardline. It's just a dumb cop focused shooter probably, and the multiplayer looks like Battlefield. So we'll see how it goes. But I don't think it'll be a huge impact on their business. If anything, if there are people that call attention to it and try to protest it, that will just serve to raise its profile. Like, this is a game that would normally kind of come and go because it's an offshoot of Battlefield, and people are like, well, if you already care about Battlefield, here's some more multiplayer. And people are like, okay, yay. And it would quietly sell a couple million, few million copies and kind of go away. But if people make a big stink about it, it will just make it sell more copies. One way or the other. Is that good or is that bad? I will leave that for you to decide.